Good evening, everyone. Let me welcome you to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, February the 4th, 2020. At this time, if you would, please check all your mobile devices and telephones that you have with you and cut those on silent for me. I would appreciate that. Madam Clerk, for the roll call, all the commissioners are present along with the county attorney and the county manager and the deputy county manager finance officer. If you are coming to the floor to speak, if you would, just press the button on the right-hand side of this microphone. The red light at the top will light up, and that way we'll be able to hear you and record you. Gentlemen, you've had the agenda for a good while, I think, so at this time I'll entertain a motion to approve. All right, you've heard Commissioner Taylor's motion. All in favor signify by raising the right hand. Madam Clerk, that'll be 5-0. Moving forward with the presentations today, the first one will be from Caitlin Settlemeyer, our Animal Services Director, about our Pet of the Month. Caitlin.
So we'll be presenting a cat and a dog again this coming month. Everybody that we've presented so far has been adopted, with the exception of Caesar, who's currently still in training. We just got an email update from today. He's still in training, doing well. That's kind of the only update we have on him. So hopefully he'll graduate soon. But we have plenty more than just the cat and the dog we'll be presenting available for adoption at the Animal Services Center. So.
All right, you sent us a report today. Do you have that one with you, or do you remember the numbers?
I have it in my mind.
Please
yes.
report that out if you would.
We took in about 137 animals this month. This month it's been by far our best month as far as adoptions and working with rescues. We're able to adopt out 85% or move out 85% of our cats and 88% of our dogs. So our cats, we've been sending about 55% for the last several months. So we're working very hard to get them out.
That was an absolutely fantastic report. We do appreciate that, and I give you a big yay. So we're headed where we're supposed to be headed, right?
Yes, we are.
All right, great. Any questions or comments for Caitlin, gentlemen? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the agenda for presentation. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, moving on to item number 2 is update on the Burke County Rescue Squad. Gentlemen, Chief Brown has the flu and has requested that we move this item to the March agenda. Does anybody have any problems with that? No. All right, hearing none without objection, this will be moved forward to the March agenda. Moving on to item number 3 is from the TDA, financial update for the period ending December 31st, 2019. Ed is out of town, but he said if it's okay with you gentlemen, he will just make the presentation at the regular meeting. Does anybody have any issues or problems with that? Hearing none and seeing none without objection, we'll hear this presentation at the regular meeting. We have no scheduled public hearings, and we'll move now to the consent agenda. Our first presentation on the consent agenda will be for the financial data from the Burke County Public Schools for the period ending December the 31st, 2019, presented by Keith Lawson, the Burke County Public Schools Finance Director. Afternoon, Keith.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to appear before you today to present the December year-to-date financial results for Burke County Public Schools. The first slide in your packet consists of all the funding sources projected for the 2019-2020 fiscal year for Burke County Public Schools. Our primary funding source, as you can see looking across the line called state, state funds, $80.6 million was our previous year's budget. As you can see, that is flat. Unfortunately, as you all are painfully aware, we still have no state budget. When the legislators reconvene April the 28th, at that point in time, as far as our fiscal year is concerned with Burke County Public Schools, regardless of their budget actions or lack of, our payrolls are all committed because our fiscal year ends June 30, and purchasing it by that point, all purchasing for the school system has been completed and cut off for the year. So we don't anticipate any change in our state spending and our state funds. As you can see, the other primary sources of funding is federal, basically flat again year to year. The lines titled local, school nurses, Charter schools and fines and forfeitures are all funds provided by you, the county commission. And then our final funding source, the special revenues funds, consist of operations such as our daycares and special grants, what have you, that don't come through the federal government or state government. Our total forecast for this year is $109.9 million in funding. Currently, halfway through the year, we're at $53.2 million, basically flat with the previous year. That'll take me to the next slide. Of that $53 million in spending, December year to year, we're $43,000 actually less in spending. That's given the fact that although we have no state budget and teachers and classified staff receive no wage increases, our 1 to 14 year teachers did receive a step increase, which is $100 per month per teacher. So we've had to offset and absorb that, as well as increased employer benefits cost. That equates to about $700,000 a year. So we're working very diligently to offset and to absorb those expenses so as not to cut in significantly to our fund balance. Of our local budget, of which you see here, about 10.5 of the $16 million provided by you, the county commissioners, is used to operate facilities. And that would include the maintenance staff involved to maintain those facilities. Our spending is up in that category by about $125,000 year to year. Doesn't even offset, again, our increase in benefits costs. So what that tells you is that we're working very hard, very diligently to curtail non-payroll related expenses in our budget. We did issue a memo to the school system employees last month to curtail spending, and only very essential items would be approved for the remainder of the year. At this point in time last year, we had spent $17,000 in fund balance. We've spent $137,000 in fund balance to this point. One of our, I don't know that it's an intended result, but we have also been able to realize some budget savings this year due to the fact of the minimum state wage of $31,200, which was funded and approved for other state facilities other than ours, the school system. So it's put a lot of pressure on us maintaining custodial staff, teacher assistants, exceptional children one-on-ones, and those types of personnel. Whenever there's positions open at other state agencies, we cannot compete. We're not competitive. We don't have the funding to meet that $31,200 minimum state wage. So we lose employees. Not so great for the school system, makes it tougher to manage, makes it a little easier from my perspective to manage the budget. But we would like to and hope to see that in the near future, when this budget standoff is resolved, that maybe that could be addressed. We continue our cost savings initiatives. We're also realizing a savings with the closure of Rutherford College Elementary School, as well as Chesterfield Elementary School, and the opening of the new, far more efficient Mountain View. With that being said, I'll just open the floor to any questions you all may have.
All right, gentlemen, you heard Keith's presentation. Any questions and or comments?
Mr. Chairman, it's a good report, Mr. Lawson. I don't have a question about the report. I wanted to ask, I asked a couple of months ago, I believe, what the population was in Burke County this year, and you gave me 11,800, and the question I had was, does that include the charter schools and is that all the pupils in North Carolina? I mean in Burke County, excuse me.
No, sir, that does not include the charter school enrollment or the homeschooling.
The homeschooling nor the, so do you have that number or not?
I do not, no,
Okay.
sir, I am sorry.
I'll find it somewhere else. I appreciate it.
I do apologize.
All right, thank
I
you.
don't know where to actually get an accurate number or a good number for homeschool students. The charter school, between New Dimensions charters and the virtual charters and the couple of other out-of-county charters that we fund, we're paying for just over 300 students that reside in Burke County that attend charters of different charters.
Well, then if we divide the 11,800 students into the 110 million, that would give us the cost per student for those in public schools, but would not include the charter schools.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Moving forward, item number 2 from Western Piedmont Community College will be the presentation of the financial data for the period ending December 31st, 2019, presented by Sandy Holman, Western Piedmont Community College Chief Financial Officer. Sandy?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. You have in your packet the financial information through December 31st, 2019, the midpoint for fiscal year 2020 for our state funds. Because we did not have a state budget passed at that time, we're using the baseline formula budget of $13,729,630, which was calculated based on the recurring funds from the previous year through what would be called a continuation budget. We've had additional allocations so far this year, $345,801 for a total state budget at December 31st of $14,075,431, which we have spent 48.5% of the budget to date. This does not include items encumbered, but only actual expenditures through December. And at this point, we did not have our longevity allocation, which would come later in January. At this point, with the state budget impasse, we have not been able to give any state salary increases funded through state, and therefore we haven't given any salary increases through any other funding source as well. Although many budget bills have passed, unfortunately it has excluded salary increases for the UNC system, community college system, and certain K through 12 positions. So unfortunately, other state agencies have gotten increases, but community colleges have not. The next 3 columns in light blue represent the county budget, which we have a budget of $2,613,155, and we have spent $1,135,712 through the second quarter, or 43.5% of the budget. We have several projects upcoming for the remainder of the year, which will account for a large part of that budget, and we've also had some savings through vacant salary positions, which we've lost employees due to other state agencies. As you heard Mr. Lawson say, we are not required to have that minimum of 31.2, and that does hurt us as far as being competitive with our skilled labor in our maintenance and housekeeping positions. We have tried some cost-saving methods also to save some money this year to be able to offset hopefully the cost of the roof replacement for Patton and E. The county has given us an allocation of $50,000 for that project, and we hope to be able to offset the rest of that cost, or at least a majority of that, through some savings, if not going into next fiscal year to finish that. The project is almost ready to bid, and we hope to be able to complete the project over the summer term when we don't have as much going on in those buildings, and that way we can also take advantage of 2 fiscal years as well. The institutional budget that you'll see in the final 3 columns, we've budgeted $5,416,497, which we have spent 52.5% of the budget. Our total combined college budget for 1920 as of December 31st, it's $22,105,083, of which we've spent 48.9%. Which at the midpoint of the year is slightly higher because we do spend more in the last half of the year, but we do feel like we've got things under control with some cost-saving measures, and with our institutional funds, that always runs a little bit higher through the first part because most of that is financial aid, student financial aid related. So if you look at the next slide, you have the breakdown of our county expenditures by category, where salaries and benefits is at 26.3%, utilities at 25.8%, and contracted services at 17.1%. Those are our top three categories for our county-funded expenditures. Just an update on some of our projects that you have funded for us. The facility master plan is almost complete. They plan to present that plan to our trustees at the April 2020 board meeting. Our signage, we are a little bit behind on because we're holding off just a touch because we've got quite a bit of reorganization and classroom and office movements that may change some of the signs, so I don't want to move ahead until we know for sure on some of that. The door access for our exterior doors around campus so that we can lock the doors immediately with one click of a button, so to speak. That is almost complete. They're finishing up on the last two buildings and some final adjustments on some other doors. And then we spoke about the roof replacement for Patton Hall and E building. That is my report for the time period ending December 31st. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, gentlemen, questions or comments for Sandy? Hearing and seeing none, without objection, that item will remain on the consent item agenda. Sandy, we thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Moving on to item number 3 will be the City of Morganton and easement agreement for the Morganton Greenway. That will be presented by the Honorable Louis Vina and Philip Luckadoo from the City of Morganton. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you and all of you for having us over here. This matter is, hopefully you'll be familiar with the history of the new Mountain View Elementary School. It was always planned that following the construction of the school, the city would develop and build what we call the Downtown Greenway Connector around the boundary of the school, which is, of course, what connects downtown Morganton, the North Green Street area, with Catawba Meadows Park by going around the edge of the school property and then crossing over the Sanford Drive at the Bouchelle Street intersection. Of course, the property where the school is owned by the county as a result of the financing arrangement, but occupied by the schools. The original plan, and we brought along a larger scale map today. I think your materials show the proposed easement where it cuts across the school property. But we brought a larger map that demonstrates where we're talking about, if I may point to it.
Yes, sir.
The school, Sanford Drive, Bouchelle Street. This is the Aquatic Center. The Greenway will come past the Aquatic Center and then down Alphabet Lane, around the two electric substations, and then over to Sanford Drive. It'll then parallel Sanford Drive over to Bouchelle. The city retains ownership of the properties along Alphabet Lane, including the two electric substations. One is the city's, one is Duke's. The original plan was that the Greenway would be entirely within that. However, due to some requirements that Duke Power had for the area outside the fenced area of the substations, the location of the Greenway had to be nudged over really just a few feet. But because of that, and because of the requirements, federal and state requirements for the grade and the curvature of the Greenway, it really needs to be located over onto the corner of what is the county's property where the school is. And this is in the area below the athletic field, in other words, down that steep slope towards Sanford Drive. As you can see from the survey map that's in your materials, this is just a tiny corner. It's a space only about 20 feet, I believe it's actually 25 feet long. Excuse me, I believe that's actually about 29 feet long, and encroaching about 15 or 20 feet into the county property, there would be an additional 10 feet in width for a temporary construction easement. All this would be below the toe of the bank behind the athletic field. We have communicated with the schools, and Larry Putnam has, as superintendent, has indicated that the schools are perfectly agreeable to this, and indeed, obviously, they want the greenway there so that it will be convenient to the school and will bring people not only past it along the greenway to the park, but potentially use for the school students and staff. I have presented and enclosed in your package is an easement agreement, which I've also furnished to the county attorney, and that's what we would be requesting that the county agree to allow construction to proceed. The city is already in position to present this, to put this out to bid for this project this spring. And I have with me today Philip Luckadoo, our Director of Development Design, if you have any questions concerning the construction, layout, and financing of the Greenway.
You've heard Louis' presentation. Any questions for Philip or Louis?
Mr. Chairman, no question, makes sense, and be a great improvement from what they got, just as long as our legal advisor says he's reviewed the contract and it's in order.
I've reviewed the contract and it's in order.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Taylor. And also, I have been privy to the email back and forth between Mr. Veni and the superintendent of the schools, Dr. Putnam. And the schools are aware and are in favor of this evening.
Any other questions or comments?
Just one from, really, I'm in total agreement with this. And once you put this out to bid, how long, because I walk down there all the time, and so how long will it be before the downtown's connected to the Greenway? Because I've been wondering about that for some time, and I see you got the road access done, I guess, down there on the bypass where you can go across. Are you gonna, from what I'm seeing, and this is kind of a little bit outside the realm, Philip, but it looks like you're cutting across the Frisbee golf course.
Yes, sir.
And so you've already got that in place. I was just trying to picture in my mind where that's coming across there, but it looks like over there toward that ditch ravine where there's some woods.
Well, right, and what we did is we worked with the disc golf association that's here to map out a course that is would have the least conflict between the disc golf users and the greenway users. So there's no or lessens the probability, I guess, of injury where that conflict may occur. So, but yes, that's what goes across there at Bouchelle, and then it goes to the right down about to where you said, and then shoots straight across.
And of course, Bouchelle Street, it's already signalized for
It's already
pedestrian
signalized for that,
crossings.
yeah. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none and without objection, this item will remain on our consent item agenda. And we thank you both for being here today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Moving on to item number 4 from the Burke County Emergency Communications Center, 911 phone hardware refresh lease agreement. And that will be presented by Brock Hall, our BCECC director. Brock?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, this lease agreement is something we discussed last year. You may or may not remember it. We did budget for this last year. You gave me the money this year, so we got the money. We're ready to move forward with it. And most of this project is 911 eligible. The only 2 positions that aren't eligible we're already paying for, so that's nothing new. The total for this project, and this is phone hardware refresh. When we're talking about that, we're basically talking about replacing all the phone hardware at all the consoles, on the primary and the backup center. So that's the CPU, the processors, the monitors, all the call handling equipment there at each console. These consoles, they have about a 5-year lifespan, and we're getting ready to start year 6. So this is right in line with the replacement cycle for this equipment. This is, we decided to go the lease route last year. We did talk about this last year. The lease route's going to save us a little bit of money over the course of 5 years in regards to the service and support we get. it actually is gonna save the 911 board money because they're the ones actually paying for it, but it is gonna be a little bit of a savings. And the other side of that is, there's a finite amount, there's a cap every year that the 911 board will reimburse for this hardware. And for us, that's currently $176,859.84. That's, you know, on the annual side. If we do the lease, we're gonna stay below that amount. So over the course of the lease, unless they change the rules, which God help us if they do, because it's been known to happen. But during the course of the lease, the entire project will be funded through the board over 5 years. If we do the upfront cost, which is $260,6714, we're obviously going to have to pay the difference. The county will have to pay that difference. So that's why we decided to go with the lease option. Once again, like I said, we've already got the money. We wanted to start this project in the fall, but we were working on the documentation for the board, for the 911 board, to make them happy. And hopefully they're happy. I think they're pretty content with this. I did provide a copy of the legal documentation to the clerk and to the county attorney. That's what I sat at your seat before you got here, if you didn't know what that was. Okay. So we're ready to move. We need to move anyway because we need to do it this fiscal year, and we're going to be pushing right on June to get this completed. That's why we're ready to get this going. So.
All right, you've heard Brock's presentation. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I have a question or not. Brock, I tried to do the numbers and it didn't come out even, so it's probably not supposed to come out even because you got a lease agreement against a purchase agreement. But anyhow, cost of the hardware was $260,667. Rent is $59,132.34. For 5 years, that's $295,612.70. Annual cost of $116,978.87.
Don't look at that number. That's including the service and support number. That 116, don't look at that. You want to look at that, the 59,132. That's what you're looking at for the annual cost. That 59,132 is the annual cost for the hardware. We're just talking about the hardware.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the service and support. We're already paid for the service and support. That 116 that you're looking at, 116,928, that includes the service and support. So that's really more for my benefit. So yeah, that doesn't factor into this particular purchase.
Anyhow, it was about $400,000 off if you did all that math, and I didn't get it to match, and I was just gonna say, what am I missing?
Right. Well, and the initial anticipated savings were around $400,000 between, and we were going to save that much money on the service and support agreement when we went with the lease. Now that we trimmed that down some because we've reformatted operations in accordance to what the 911 board will pay for. So now the savings are going to be closer to 15 or 20,000, but they're still savings. You know, it's not the bigger savings we were looking at, but it's still going to be less. But you know, that service and support we already pay for. So they put that 116,928 in there kind of for my benefit on this quote here, but that's kind of off to the side. We already pay for that. Since this is just the hardware and that's what the 911 board's looking at, you know, it is a little, it's a little hard to decipher, but.
Well, your presentation is good, and I was going to include in that semi-question, I assume that renting is a better deal than buying on that equipment, or in the long run, would we be better to purchase the equipment, or does it get old before it gets wore out? You know, technology is moving so fast. A lot of this type of operation and equipment is done through lease programs.
It is, and you're looking at a 5-year replacement cycle on this equipment, and this is a 5-year lease. So presumably when the lease is up, it'll be time to replace the equipment anyway. And this is essentially a lease to purchase, so we will own it after 5 years. But at that point in time, we'll either renegotiate a new lease or a new purchase at that point. So, and you're right, the technology, that's the reason why we have to keep updating this stuff, because the equipment we got is already out of service with the new operating systems and everything that's in place. So, you know, we would be forced to make an update anyway, you know, at this stage in the game.
Very good. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Other questions or comments for Brock? Hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Rock.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5 from Community Development is to accept the STBG-DA grant agreement for the Linville Dam presented by Shane Prisby, Community Development Operations Manager. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Community Development Department is eager to begin the RFQ process for our STBGDA grant for the Linville Dam Boardwalk and Trail. This project is the sister project to our active Cobb North Powerhouse section of the trail, as they will link up to each other around Laurel Ridge Court. So we have begun the next step in that process, which is requesting the agreement from NCDOT, which has still not been sent to us. So at this point, I would like to request this item be moved to the agenda next month so that you can all see the agreement officially before we present it to you.
All right, the request from Shane is to move this item to the March agenda. Does anybody have any questions on that? Any comments, any complaints? Hearing none, without objection, this will be moved to the March agenda. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much.
Moving to item number 6 from our finance is our county financial report for the period ending December the 31st, 2019, presented by Margaret Pierce, Deputy County Manager and Chief Finance Officer. Margaret?
Good afternoon. You've got in your packet the financial report for the period ending December 31st. The top section is our revenues. You'll see that we're at 59% overall, the primary piece of that being the property taxes, which predominantly come in July and August, so definitely in the first part of the year. And we're on target for our usual collection rate with those, slightly above last year at the same point. Sales tax is always lagging behind. This is only 3 months reporting, so we're in good shape there as well. We're up about 1%, which is awesome. Always like to be up in sales tax. It means we're growing. Other revenues are on target for the 50%. Intergovernmental is completely tied to expenditures, so it's fine that it's below percentage on that one, and very typical for this time of year, relating to DSS expenditures, health department expenditures, and other grants and restricted funds. The expenditures below, we're looking at 45% overall, which is just below 50% of the year. The areas that are above tend to have one-time larger payments in them. The library is above because that includes the project at Valdez that was completed a few months ago. So they will show up because of that. Maintenance and operations is up because they have one-time payments and also had several projects going on, such as the Sally Port is included in that area. The sales tax summary articles at the bottom, as I said, are all running about 1% up for sales tax. The second page of it is water, sewer, and then solid waste operations, both of which are running online. Water, sewer is running below expenditures. There are some one-time and larger bills that they are working on that will bring that back up in line with 50% of the year soon. Questions?
Questions or comments from Margaret?
Mr. Chairman, Margaret, just a couple. In the sales tax row there, can you give us an idea of which of those articles below make up that 7.4 million? How does that break out?
So that's a piece of Article 40 and a piece of Article 42. Because of how it splits with the school system, some of those funds go to other areas, and we don't include them in this report. That's why I break down the sales tax at the bottom. So the 7.4 is, it's actually all of Article 42 and a portion of 40.
And then I think you kind of hit on the intergovernment, but if you could, again, just kind of tell us what all was made up in that intergovernmental row as a reminder.
So any of our funds that come from state, federal, or local governments are in that section. The biggest piece, as a general rule, is our reimbursements on DSS expenditures. They're always filing about 6 weeks behind when the expenses are made. So we don't see those funds then for another 2 or 3 weeks from the government. So basically, you're 2 months behind on getting your money back on the expenditures we've made. That's why it tends to lag behind. But the largest portion, because DSS's budget is 16 million, I believe, 17 million. So the largest portion of that is funds that come back from there.
And then again, on the transfer from other funds, that was primarily other grant funds and things that,
That is just us swapping money between funds, where we transfer money to Fontevore Trail, we'll transfer money to solid waste, water sewer, we transfer money to sales tax, to the school sales tax fund, where we set aside dollars. It's those transactions that are within our house, but not in this fund.
thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, let me ask Brian, well, Margaret or Brian, either one. I noticed the solid waste revenue, continues to climb. We're at about 5.5 million. Is it time for us to either think about looking at an alternative? And we have talked about this in the past, a time or two, not talked about it, brought it up, but if we could burn that trash and make electricity, is the time to take a look at that. So, I don't know.
There is a gas to energy project going on there to burn the methane gas, or gas extraction to burn the methane, but I don't believe the pressure's enough that you'd be able to turn it into energy at this point. Solid waste fund is just becoming self-sustaining. For years, the general fund has had to supplant. So I don't think we're at a point where it's because we're taking in enough trash. One of the reasons the revenue would be up this time of year is a portion of it's collected on tax bills.
Well, it's been a couple of months now, and this is just FYI for your information, is that they caught New York City, I believe it is, who was paid to haul trash to Germany or to somebody. They dumped it in the ocean, so, and it's created a massive problem for fish and everything else in the ocean. And I just wondered if an incinerator and burning it would produce enough electricity to pay for itself or not. I don't know.
I'm not even sure we're able to burn trash. I would have to check the state rates, but I don't believe you are. The only thing we collect there is C&D. The rest is transferred straight out. The regular residential trash gets transferred out.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Margaret. Item number 7 from the Fire Marshal is our hazard mitigation plan resolution presented by Mike Willis, Fire Marshal. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. It's the 5-year cycle for the Unit 4 Hazard Mitigation Plan, and just to give you a little background on that, that was back in 2000, the Disaster Management Act kind of changed the guidelines on how mitigation plans were to be developed, and now that's took 2 or 3 different avenues. Back in 2013, the state agreed to start funding some of this for us through their planning grants. And a lot of communities bonded together to make better use of resources and time and funds to create regional hazard mitigation plans, since most regions had similar issues when it comes to natural hazards. So our region is the Unit 4 region. It's Alexander, Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba counties. And in 2013, they developed the first plan, and now it's just the 5-year revision of it. And this plan is required in order to be eligible for pre- and post-disaster funding, mitigation funding for hazards and disaster relief.
Questions from Mike on the mitigation plan?
Mike, did you read the 1,309 pages in its entirety?
No, sir, I did not.
I just had to ask that.
Well,
I'm sure it was riveting if it was, so if you did.
I read the Burke County portions, let's put it that way.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I will share with you that I got asked 3 times over the weekend what the county's doing about the big scare of the virus from China. And my response to them was that we would probably get our instructions from state or either federal government, and that the government had reacted, and anybody coming from China that has to be now transported to an area where they go through a quarantine time. So, but I think it's interesting to know that people are thinking at least that, you know, you never know when a hazard's going to hit you, and you never know exactly what the response will be. But we thank goodness that we do have a plan.
Thank you, sir.
All right, hearing no objections, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 8 from General Services will be the discontinue of the water sewer payment box at Avery Avenue in Morganton. That will be presented by Miles Champion, our General Services Director. Miles?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. General Services proposes to discontinue using the outside payment drop box located on the corner of North Green Street and Avery Avenue after March 31st, 2020. The drop box has been used for receiving water sewer payments from customers for several years. General Services personnel retrieves the payments from the drop box each day and hand delivers them to the Hildebrand Water Sewer Office for processing. On the average, there are 0 to 3 pieces of mail in the drop box. Staff would save approximately 1 hour each day by no longer hand delivering payments from the drop box to the Hildebrand office. The staff time saved can be utilized for building maintenance tasks. Water sewer customers would still have 3 options to submit their payments: by mail, in person at the Hildebrand office, and through online bill pay service. Staff recommends the last day that the drop box would be used is March 31st, 2020. And on April 1st, staff will remove the drop box from the site. Customers currently using the drop box will be notified by telephone, and a notice will be printed on the water sewer bills for the March billing cycle. The tax office has its own drop box and will not be affected by this change. There's no budgetary effect, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions or comments from Miles on the removal of this box?
Mr. Chairman, Miles, have we considered any other options to allow payments to still remain here in Morganton some way, some fashion, perhaps? And Margaret or Danny might be a better one to answer this question, but would it be feasible for the tax office to collect that 2 or 3 payments and deposit that with their, on a separate deposit at the end of the day with their other deposits?
The tax office wouldn't be able to because it has to go straight into the software. At this time, we couldn't set them up. It is something that could be taken at finance and posted. It wasn't something that I was aware of, so, but I think that would be something that could happen.
Could a separate terminal be set at the tax office where the public could come to a place that's already open to the public for payments? Would that be an option to consider? And use the same drop box for both instances?
The payments could be removed from the drop box and simply brought to the finance office instead of taken to Hildebrand. Or if you want to take the drop box out, we could set up some other option to.
So right now, there's no walk-in payment option for the public, is that correct?
Yes, at the Hildebrand office.
I'm talking in Morganton.
No, sir.
No, because it has to be entered into the payment system correctly so that they get credited for that and don't get late fees. And that's one reason we have to deliver it every day we pick it up, is sometimes the customers wait till the very last minute, and we try our best not to incur late fees, so that it has to be entered the same day it's in the drop box.
Was that something then, Margaret, that the drop box could just be brought to your office?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
I I'd like to suggest we give that some thought before we shut that down and do away with any option for our customers to have to do something altogether different.
I'm certainly open to suggestions as Margaret, enlightened me, so that's great. We'll work together on it if you want to.
We can even have finance staff check the box so they don't have to utilize staff time.
All right, at the request of Chairman Britton, I'm gonna ask you three to get together, county manager, finance officer, Miles, y'all get together and see if we can come up with a different solution besides this one. And then, I don't know that we need to present back, but let us know what you come up with on that one and see if we can still continue to have a box here somewhere so that citizens can use it here. Any questions on what I've asked you to do?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
If
sir.
I may, I had the same concerns that Jeff did. I just wondered why we'd want to close the Morganton drop box, but when only 3 or 4 are utilizing it, it just, to me, it just makes sense and it saves money. And that hour a day you're talking about is 5 hours a week, right? That we're paying for
Yes.
somebody to pick up 3 or 4 envelopes?
Yes, and it takes away from my maintenance. I won't have 4 personnel in maintenance, building maintenance, so an hour a day is a huge amount of time each day for us.
So in answering that question, I assume that 99 and 9/10% of the people who are already sending the payment to Hildebrand. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right, gentlemen, without objection, Madam Clerk, I want to remove this from this month's agenda. Mr. County Manager, if you see fit that it needs to come back to another agenda in March, please let me know or let the clerk know, and then we'll move forward with that. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to item number 9 from JCPC is a funding allocation revision for Raise the Age Expansion Funds that will be presented by A.J. Katu. A.J.?
Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. As you may remember from reports leading up to this past December, the legislature raised the age of most youth considered to be juveniles from up to 16 to up to 18. And among other things they did, they released a small amount of funding to the local JCPCs in order for them to increase the services that the agencies provide, that we fund, or that you all fund, for December through June of the current fiscal year. So Burke County was allotted $36,505. The council properly published a request for proposals and 4 programs responded. With the limited funds available, the Finance Committee and the Council voted to recommend to you the amended funding plan that you received on this, the abstract for this agenda. Those reflect the increases to 3 currently funded programs and 1 newly funded program or recommendations for funding. Those all comply with restorative justice programs that the Department of Juvenile Justice is very strongly recommending that we fund, as well as priorities that JCPC has had for years. So for some time, we obviously wanted to fund these, but we didn't have the allotment of income, and as you know, that allotment has been flat for about 10 years. So this is a nice opportunity. So individually, the council's recommending that Kids at Work receive an additional $14,571. All of these are during this current fiscal year. Repay sex offender assessment and treatment, $6,417, and the new restorative justice program, $15,517. So the council respectfully requests your consideration of the recommended budget revision, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have about those.
All right, questions for AJ on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, AJ, would you mind, I think I know what most of these are, but on the three that received the funding, would you mind just kind of giving us a brief description of what those
Certainly,
do?
certainly. The Kids at Work is one of the only programs that actually do hands-on training and interpersonal skill building for the youth. And in this case, it's for restaurant services, both for preparing foods and everything that you can imagine that's integrated into running a restaurant in terms of the services. They also have a certification that lets the youth go through a program for food safety, that once they've gotten that certification, while they're doing this training, they can work at a restaurant for $1 or more per hour because they've been certified in that kind of food safety program. And while they're doing all this, they are given interpersonal skills for team building, for anger management, for any number of things that you need if you're going to work successfully with a group of other folks. They are in a number of different counties, and our juvenile court counselors are very pleased with the results they get in terms of recidivism from this particular program. The REPAY sex offender assessment and treatment is exactly what it says. I'm sure that you've heard from the minutes of our meetings that we've had to deal with a substantial increase in the number of youth that are being exposed to pornography through their telephones and computers and so forth, and are acting out on those kinds of training, if you will, with other children. And so that program is consistently needing more of our funding. And I'm sure Maynard's told you that we've had a number of different efforts within the group and outside of the group of the council to try to address this increase. The new restorative justice program is an option for a less expensive and more inclusive and flexible option for a sort of teen court, so that youth that would normally go into a juvenile court counselor's milieu would have a chance to go through a program with his peers and address whatever the issue is that has gotten them in trouble. And the state has pushed really hard to get all of the juvenile crime prevention councils in the state to have some sort of of restorative justice program on board. A lot of them have been active in the state for years and years, typically in a teen court setting. And this is an option to that, as I said earlier, is more flexible and less expensive and easier to enact. It may be, it's been on our list of priorities for a number of years, but we haven't been able to fund it. Does that answer your question? Did that answer more than your question?
Any other questions or comments for AJ? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Let's move forward, AJ, to the funding policy revision.
All right, thank you. As you know, every few years, the council's governance committee finds in the bylaws or the funding policy items which need to be updated or clarified. That's basically what this request is. In this case, the council is recommending updating the media announcements of any annual funds, partial additions to funds, or funds released during the year by current programs, so that the new wording would incorporate things like the website posting and allow the council to avoid unforeseen advertising costs if necessary. That's kind of a sort of new age update. Another one of them is to make the annual paperwork more reasonable for the programs currently funded. And these programs are heavily monitored, I must say, from all different directions, from the state and from the county, and annual monitoring by the governance committee. So programs that are already funded and are monitored in all sorts of ways, it just simply allows them not to have to come up with their financial statement or their annual, make copies, actually, is the upshot of that. The final change clarifies a long-standing policy that JCPC has had, that programs not meeting the necessary council and state deadlines may have their funds delayed. We don't often have problems with that, but when we do, because there's such a strict deadline for everything, it's a set of dominoes. And because, of course, we have to bring it to you and you meet once a month, and it's really hard on everyone if everyone doesn't meet the deadline. So that just clarifies that we will set aside those funds until all their paperwork is in. And so council respectfully requests that your consideration of those recommended changes to the funding policy. Any
Thank you, AJ, for that
questions?
report. Any questions or comments on those? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda.
Thank you so
AJ.
much.
All right, moving forward to items number 11 and 12 on the tax department will be our tax collection report for January 2020 and our release refund report for January 2020. Danny?
Afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you. Tax collection report. I'm going to start at the bottom of the page, work my way up. The motor vehicles, we have collected 61.11% so far for the budget. Property tax at 96.48% collected. So the two of those together will give you the current year taxes at 93.09% collected. Delinquent taxes, 82.01, and late list penalty at 87.33. And then the very top part is the actual property tax versus the levy, which we are at 93.45%.
All right, questions for Danny on the tax collection report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the refund.
Release refund, we had the report shows the amount of $4,773.43. We rebilled $406.26, which gives us a net release of $4,367.17. We have $1,000.85 in refunds. The vehicle tax, we have refunds in the amount of $478.40.
All right, questions on the refund report? All right, hearing none without objections, items number 11 and number 12 will remain on the consent item agenda. Let's move into item number 13, which is order to advertise for the 2019 delinquent real property taxes. Dan?
Yes, sir. This is pursuant to General Statute 105-369, which says the tax collector shall report to the governing board the total amount of unpaid taxes for the current fiscal year that are liens on real property. So without going back over them, these are the same numbers that were on the January collections report. This statute also says that the tax collector shall send notices to the delinquent property owners and notify them of these delinquent taxes. That's to be done 30 days prior to being advertised in the paper. So what we do, on January the 17th, we sent these delinquent notices out to all real property owners. That gave them till February 28th to pay to avoid their name being advertised in the newspaper, which happens to be the News Herald. We also have notices going in each Sunday for 4 Sundays, notifying them of this lien advertisement that will be done. And so by giving them till February 28th, then we have a week or so there to create the file to send to the newspaper. Then we have to also take that file and take a look at it, make sure any corrections that need to be made. And so what I'm asking here is just part of the general statute that asks us, the board, to order us to advertise. And I'm not sure that it made your thing, but I do have a copy here of the letter that we send out to all taxpayers.
All right, questions or comments for Danny?
Mr. Chairman, I have two. The first one is that there's so many people that don't necessarily take the paper, and I wonder, Danny, if shouldn't be at least some radio ads or mail outs or something that says, if you don't get a paper, this is what's happening, and give them a second chance. And the other question I had, Danny, was how are we this year? Are we catching up? Is it about the same number of delinquent payers as there has been in the past, or are we improving as the years goes along?
I would, to answer your second question, I would have to go back and look at our stats. I do not know the answer off the top of my head. To answer your first question, that's the reason we send this property notice out, this delinquent tax notice. It informs all the delinquent taxpayers that are delinquent at that point in time that they will be advertised in the paper if they do not pay it by the February 28th date. Like I say, we also put that in the newspaper. It is actually on part of our advertising on the radio that begins mid-December, telling people to list their personal property taxes and that taxes become delinquent after January 5th.
Thank you.
Danny, if you would, if you'll answer Commissioner Taylor's second question and send that to us by email with the numbers.
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay. Margaret, do you have a comment?
I recommend using the website as well to put something about the delinquent taxes.
We do, on the website, we do have a little news blurb on the landing page that we can put that on, and I'll be glad to do that. And also, once it is advertised in the paper, I do put that lien advertisement on the website.
Any other questions or comments for Danny? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to section number 6 is our items for decision. The first item will be from the Board of Commissioners, a resolution declaring Burke County, North Carolina constitutional rights protected county. Gentlemen, if you'll recall at our last meeting, 90-some plus people appeared at the Commissioners' meeting asking for this resolution. We had 4 people who spoke eloquently about their desire for Burke County to become a constitutionally protected county. We listened to those, and with that being said, a resolution was drawn. Right now, I think, if I remember correctly, as of last night, Caldwell adopted and several other counties, so that means we are sitting in the middle. We're the only one. Everybody around us has adopted a resolution of some manner, shape, or form. So I am asking that you, and I'm sure you've already read the resolution, I'm asking that you vote for this resolution when we meet again on the 18th. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Yes, sir.
make one, I think it's important, it is important to me that, and I thank you all for supporting it too, but it's important that when you're elected as a county commissioner or any legal position that has to do with government, and I brought the oath I signed, and Madam Clerk, I have now signed it, 5 times? Plus once for school board, which is a total of 6. But when you are sworn in, so to speak, It goes something, I'm going to read a sentence or two if I may, just
Go ahead,
for
sir.
emphasis. I, Maynard Taylor, do solemnly swear to affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States, that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance of that state, of the state of North Carolina, and to the constitutional powers and the authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof. And it continues to emphasize again that we should uphold, and we are sworn by oath, the Constitution of the state and the Constitution of the United States. So we are fulfilling almost a legal law by taking that oath. And when people present things to you that request you do wrong, it's not very hard to say no. So I just wanted to show those emphasis in that oath that we all take when we're elected as county commissioners. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? I do suspect that we'll have some visitors on the 18th. For those that are speaking in favor of the resolution, I hope that when they sign up, no more than 3 or 4 sign up like we did last time. I think there will be opposition folks there. Don't know how many. There was opposition at the Caldwell. Some folks were there. Don't know how many might be there. So I want you to be prepared in case some people do show up in opposition to our recommendation for the resolution. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Without objection, this item will remain on the items for decision. Moving on to item number 2 from the county manager is relative to education benefits for our detention officers. That will be presented by Brian Steen, county manager, along with our HR folks. If they will come forward to Lorinda, y'all come on up here. Rhonda, Lorinda, and Rhonda. Sounds like a duo team there. Y'all singers? Okay. I won't. You can sing our blessings for the county. So. Okay. All right, Ms. County Manager, you want to start?
Thank you, gentlemen. As you know, we're trying to recruit and retain detention officers for our new jail. And one of the things that we are looking at is what's before you is very similar, in fact, almost word for word of what we've done for the sworn law enforcement officers. We're asking this board to approve for the detention officers, again, to help us with recruitment and retention. I think our HR friends can be a little more eloquent than I am about that, but that's kind of the short version.
I think you summed it up nicely, Brian, but I pulled together a couple of facts so you guys would kind of understand the impact of this if you enact this.
Put your big voice on.
Okay, my big voice on. Just so you guys know that if we do, if this is passed, then really the impact right now would be for about 3 employees with the detention classification, and the cost would be about $2,000 for the year for that. And at this time, we don't have anybody that would qualify for the advanced certification or the intermediate certification, but they could work through that process to become qualified, and that's what happened with the sworn law as well. Sworn law, right now, we have about, just, for context purposes, we have about 25 participants in the education allowance, and then for the advanced certification, we have 23, and then for the intermediate certification, we have 35. And Lorinda has done a great job working with the sheriff's office and trying to recruit for detention officers to fill the new jail, and, we just implemented the new part-time jail detention positions as well. Lorinda, I don't know if you want to speak to anything about the recruitment efforts that we've gone through and
Yes,
teaming up with the sheriff's office.
We have teamed up with the sheriff's office, and we have 7 people, I believe, in the pipeline right now that are being background checked.
And we have 7 vacancies
We
right
have
now.
7 vacancies, and they're starting with the full-time staff that they need so desperately, and they have been targeting individuals that can work both sides, the female and the male sides of the jail, to really give them the relief that they need on the overtime right now. And as soon as we fill the full-time positions, then they will be targeting filling the 15 part-time positions, and hopefully have some bullpen, I think has been thrown around as a term, so that when we do have a full-time detention officer that resigns or retires, there will be people who can successfully be promoted from part-time to full-time, which has worked quite successfully with 911.
Gentlemen, before I open it up for questions, I want to make a couple comments. The Sheriff's Association news that comes out every week has the last one that came out actually addressed the issue of detention officers across North Carolina. We're not the only county that is suffering with vacancies in detention officers. There are several counties that actually have they have taken their jails and refurbished those jails and added more beds because they needed to because of the crime situation. And they've actually had to start, after they opened up their new jails, sending their inmates to other jails because they don't have enough people to work. How many applications, Lorinda, is it that we have on file now for detention officers?
Since October the 17th, at last count about a week ago, there were 202 full-time applications.
We are blessed in a way. We have 202 applications. The problem is getting through the exacerbated process that you have to go through to get somebody on board. I wish we didn't have to do that, but the state requirements are as such that we have to go through this long process to even try to get somebody on board. One person at the sheriff's office has to go through the background checks, et cetera, to make sure that these people are qualified to get on board over there. So that's one of the major problems that we have. So I encourage you to, if you don't get the Sheriff's Association news, look at that, you'll see what problems other counties are having. We do have a problem, but we have a good problem because we got enough people that we probably could hire if we can just get through that process. So now I'll open it up for questions and comments from y'all.
Just one quick comment. I think the county manager's recommendation is fair and equitable. We've done it for the sworn officers. I think this would definitely help us out in that area, and I believe in rewarding people for trying to achieve higher education and higher learning in whatever form it is. So I'm fine with it.
I think it demonstrates a commitment to sworn and non-sworn is both important to the county and to the sheriff's department as a whole.
And just to kind of give you guys an update, we have received a lot of resumes on the part-time positions that were just posted recently. So I don't have the count right now, but we're receiving them daily, and so it's good news.
Mr. Chairman, I think she answered two of my questions. If I heard you correctly, you said that this increase would be $2,000 a year raise for the average, and you have 25 who qualify?
No, we have 3 right now that qualify for the education allowance. Right now, detention officers, we have 3, and that impact would be $2,000 annually.
You have 3 who qualify for this.
Rhonda,
sorry.
that amount of money is the total cumulative for the 3 people, not per person.
Correct. That would be the total impact for the year.
2,000 for all 3.
So $700.
No, 2,000 for all 3.
$700 balance per person. Yeah, per person, yeah.
And the 25 was with the sworn officers, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
I still will never like, so adjusting pay scales in the middle of the year, and it should be included with next year's budget. We approved the budget, and it seems like we can't make it a median without increasing the budget. So, but the theory is fine with me. I don't mind that we recognize. I don't mind that we somebody who wants to get out and better themselves. It's okay if we reward them as long as it doesn't break the bank. But that's I just despise adding to the budget. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the decision item agenda. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, moving on, item number 3 from Madam Clerk will be appointment and removals to the Burke County Planning Board. Kay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to remove Robert Love from seat number 4 on the planning board. We have received 2 excellent applications from Joyce, and if I'm pronouncing this right, Cunahan and Sarah Chester. Mr. Love was kind enough to serve until we could get some applications in, and so you do have a choice of 2 candidates, who knows, maybe more by the regular meeting date, but at least 2 at this point. And the term would end September 30th, 2021.
Question for Kay on the appointments to the Burke County Planning Board? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the decision item agenda. Moving on to section number 7 for reports, County Manager, the 2019 summary of accomplishments. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We've had a busy year, a lot of accomplishments. We will have that ready for a formal presentation in a couple of weeks for you. And I think you will be very pleased, I hope, as well as our citizens, at what has been done for them. And this, I think, is about the 8th or 9th time I've done this, so maybe coming up on the 10th, I'm not sure. It is a nice report. It's
Are you going to furnish that to us before the meeting or at the meeting?
Is that in the agenda packet?
My plan to put it in the packet, but.
Okay, all right, good. Any questions for Brian on the summary of accomplishments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain up for the report section there. Okay, gentlemen, let me remind you of some upcoming events. We've got our budget planning retreat. That'll be February the 20th and February the 21st. Please make plans to attend that. Our Sally Port grand opening down at the old courthouse, or new old courthouse, is March the 12th, 2020 at 10:30 a.m. And gentlemen, we are hosting District 13 NCACC meeting, and that will be down at Foothills Higher Education Center on March the 31st in the evening, probably starting at, I would say, around 5:30, something like that. So if you would, since we are hosting that, if you could make that meeting, I would certainly appreciate that. Anything else need to come before the board at this time? Hearing nothing, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.